Growing up on the northern boundary of Ridgefield Valley, I knew every corner of my grandparents' property. Their home occupied a small clearing surrounded by endless forest trees pressing in from all sides like silent sentinels. As a child, this felt comforting. My grandfather seemed to know everything happening on his land. A single snapping branch would make him pause and nod knowingly. Back then, I believed nothing could catch him off guard. And that made me feel invincible too. Before we continue, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. Alright, let's dive back in. But safety is a fragile illusion. After both grandparents passed, grandfather first, grandmother years later, the property sat abandoned. I avoided my responsibility until legal documents forced my hand. Last October, 15 years after my last visit, I finally returned. The gravel road narrowed into rutted dirt, and my sedan felt absurdly out of place. The isolation was complete. No power lines, no houses, nothing but trees. Just 3 nights, I told myself. 3 nights to sort belongings and sign paperwork, then escape back to city life. But the house had been waiting. The porch sagged dangerously. One board rotted completely through. Inside, musty odors mixed with something sour like decomposing leaves. Grandmother's knitting basket sat untouched, needles still piercing half-finished yarn. Everything preserved, frozen in time. That first night, exhaustion drove me to bed early. The old house creaked and settled around me. Then, sometime after midnight, I heard a deliberate scraping directly beneath the floorboards. Too methodical to be an animal. The sound moved in patterns, testing the wood grain, searching. Then came the thud, like a palm pressing against the floor's underside. I lay paralyzed until dawn broke. The next night, it came closer. Daylight restored my courage temporarily. I checked the crawl space, nothing disturbed. Just overtired, I reasoned, though my eyes kept returning to the kitchen hatch leading beneath the house. The second night, I tried staying awake. Just after midnight, the scraping started again, louder and more insistent. The boards under my bed creaked. Then came the voice, low, muffled, rasping from directly below. Unintelligible words shaped by something wet and wrong. I grabbed my bag and ran. What I saw at the top of the stairs made my blood freeze. The kitchen hatch was opening. Slowly, carefully. Something pale emerged through the gapper, dirt-streaked shoulder. A thin arm reaching for purchase. I didn't wait to see more. I bolted through the front door into the clearing, grass wet against my ankles, running until trees swallowed me. Pressed against an oak, I fumbled with my phone. No signal. Footsteps descended the porch, searching. I held my breath as they wandered through the grass, pausing, listening. The breathing I heard was wet and labored. Only at dawn did I dare return. The front door stood wide open. Inside, the hatch was closed again, neat as you please. I grabbed what I could reach without going upstairs and drove until the trees disappeared behind me. Story 2. At 26, I should have known better than to let my cousin Derek convince me to hike Fox Hollow. Everyone in eastern Kentucky knew the stories. Hunters vanishing, gear found, but never the people. My grandfather's warnings echoed. Those ridges swallow folks whole. But Derek dismissed such tales as superstition. He wanted to camp where the map goes blank, and I didn't want to seem afraid. We should have turned back at the rusted gate. The first day felt normal enough. We followed old service roads through September greenery, passing stone chimneys standing alone and rusted relics of forgotten families. That night by the creek, Derek bragged about his wilderness expertise, while something in the darkness made leaves crunch in patterns too deliberate to be random. The second day, the trail dissolved into deer paths. We found a sign nailed high on a poplar. Now return trail. Derek laughed, but I couldn't shake the chill. Then I saw it moving in the gully below. At first, I thought elk pale, tall, gliding silently. Then it stood upright, arms too long, hanging to its knees. Its head turned methodically, and when its face tilted skyward, I saw its jaw split up the middle and fall open. My hands clenched so tight the protein bar wrapper tore. Then it vanished behind saplings. That night we made no fire. In the darkness, the whippoorwills fell silent. Then I heard my mother's voice calling my name, Nathan, the same soft tone from childhood. My chest went hollow. Derek's sleeping bag was empty. I scrambled out, flashlight shaking, called his name into the void. My mother's voice came again from downslope, pulling at something deep inside me. Then I saw it 20 yards away, half hidden behind black oak, skin slick and stretched over wrong bones, long arms hanging slack, fingers brushing leaves. No eyes. That was worst of all. It circled slowly, shoulders twisting impossibly. A second one flickered between trunks. Behind me, voices rose, my mother's, Derek's, my own. I ran. Branches whipped my face, voices calling my name in different pitches behind me. I didn't stop until hitting the old service road at dawn, collapsing in the dirt, throat burning. When the Forest Service truck arrived, I couldn't explain where Derek was. I just shook my head. I never told them what I saw. Story 3. After my Uncle Randall's funeral in southern Missouri, something stuck under my ribs, grief mixed with something older, something I'd carried since childhood. That Sunday afternoon, I packed a rucksack and drove to Jasper Bend, a trail people only discussed after drinks. Stories from the 1800s about loggers who disappeared. Nobody agreed on what happened, only that nobody maintained the trail anymore. The rusted gate hung on one hinge, the sign's letters barely visible. I should have turned back, but the quiet felt like the only thing that might help. A mile in, I found the collapsed fence line. Past it lay a clearing with stones circling what looked like foundation remains. In the center, a crooked sapling grew from a shallow pit. My mouth went dry. I skirted around without approaching by the river. I found footprints in the silt too narrow for adults, too far apart. Like whoever made them was jumping or moving in ways I couldn't picture. I built my fire and tried reading, but couldn't focus. Then came the whistle, 2 notes, clean and deliberate, drifting down the slope. After a pause, it came again, same notes, same waiting silence. I called out, "Hello." Nothing answered. The silence felt worse than the whistle. Hours later, I dozed off, clutching my knife. I woke to my heart hammering. Slow footsteps crunched leaves, outside careful. Measured steps that stopped right outside my tent. Something pressed against the fabric. A single finger traced the nylon above my knee. Slow, feeling the shape of my leg through the material. My jaw clenched until my teeth ached. The finger moved again, exploring. I didn't breathe. Finally, the pressure lifted and steps faded into darkness. At first light, I found no tracks. Nothing broken. No evidence anyone had been there. But at my truck, something waited. Propped against the driver's door was pale bark curled at the edges. Someone had carved a shape-long legs, oval head, no arms. Just that blank silhouette watching me leave. Story 4. The house in Elkford belonged to my uncle, a narrow two-story building with wood gone grey and foundation stones cracked wide. I'd only visited on Thanksgivings, never staying past sundown. But last December, after my life imploded, I moved in temporarily. My girlfriend had left, work hours were cut, and Mum's concerned calls confirmed I was falling apart. The first weeks were quiet enough, days splitting wood, nights listening to the house creak. I kept the generator fueled and a revolver in a lockbox. By the bed, just common sense out here. That night started like any other. Around 10, I heard soft scraping across the porch, then 3 little taps against the door. I cracked it open, nothing moved on the empty porch. Just cold, damp air, smelling faintly sour. Just before midnight came 3 calm knocks. I stood fast, pressed my palm to the cold wood. Hello. Nothing, not a shuffle or creak. The peephole showed the same empty porch. An hour later, I heard footsteps upstairs, not random creak-satchel footsteps. Slow and steady, moving from the hall to the stairs, crossing toward the spare room. I grabbed the revolver and climbed to the landing. My uncle's bedroom door cracked open an inch. I flicked the light switch. Nothing. The bulb had worked that afternoon. The room was empty, bare mattress, empty drawers, locked window. I backed out and turned toward my bedroom door. A whisper came from the other side, thin and papery, repeating words in an unknown language. I pressed my ear to the door, pulse hammering. I took a shallow breath and swung it open. Silence. Everything looked normal and made bed, duffel bag by the closet. Then something moved in my peripheral vision. A tall, thin shape wrapped in something that belonged in the ground. I jerked the revolver up, but the shape was already gone. Sliding out the door, I didn't stop running until the trees opened to the road. I stood there gasping, throat tasting metallic, until sunrise. The house stood perfectly still. I never went back. Story 5. At 24, I rode my grandfather's old Polaris ATV down trails I'd explored as a kid. After he died, someone had to clear out his Tennessee property, and the memories drew me back to the old paths, especially the one behind the barn. The first mile was familiar pavement and clay. Then I passed the old hunting blind in the black walnut tree, its ladder snapped halfway up, not rotted broken, like something heavy had climbed it. 15 minutes later, I found the trailers. 3 trailers sat in a crooked semicircle in a wide clearing, decades of rust and decay. Windows punched out, doors missing. The kind of place where nothing good happened. Then I noticed fresh tire tracks in soft dirt. I killed the engine and walked to the nearest trailer. Inside, leaves and stained carpet covered the floor. In the far corner, bones, small ones, picked clean and stacked in careful rows. That's when I saw the twine across the doorway. Little grey shapes dangled from it, clacking in breeze I couldn't feel. I leaned closer, skulls, each one drilled and threaded like beads. I should have left. Instead, I followed the tracks, past the trailers, down, switchbacks marked with boards nailed to trees, symbols painted in brown that flaked in the wind, circles slashed with diagonal lines, spirals around stick figures. The trail ended at a collapsed stone foundation, a doorway sunk into the hillside, a black hole, big enough to walk through. The smell hit me 6 feet away, thick, sweet rot that clung to my throat. I pulled my shirt over my nose and aimed my flashlight inside. In the far corner, burlap sacks shifted deliberately. A scraping breath, low and wet. My knees went weak. I stepped back, hand clamped down on my shoulder. A man in a battered canvas hat stood beside me, beard streaked, mouth twisted in a humorless smile. I couldn't see his face clearly. "Don't go in there," he said, like giving directions. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. He raised one finger to his lips. "You don't belong here. Turn around." He leaned closer, breath smelling like rain-soaked soil. "Run." He released me, and whatever held me still snapped. I bolted up the trail, legs shaking, knowing if I looked back, I'd see something that would never leave my mind. I didn't slow down until the barn came into view. Story 6, Act 1. I agreed to help my cousin Paige clear her grandfather's cabin deep in the Blue Ridge. He'd died alone in the kitchen. Nobody realized it until mail spilled off the porch. The sheriff found him days later. Paige couldn't face going alone, so we drove out together. The driveway was barely visible, just ruts in the dirt choked with weeds. The cabin leaned hard to one side, half the shingles missing. Porch rail hanging by one nail dot inside. The smell hit us first. Stale, heavy, layered, overwrought. Dust coated everything, sagging recliner, folding table covered in newspapers, old cans. By the stove was a dark stain. I didn't look long. We split up to work faster. I handled the kitchen while Paige sorted the living room. In the bedroom, shelves were crowded with jars. Most labels read okra, beans, peaches. The contents had collapsed into grey mush. One jar held a pale lump that looked almost like a curled animal. A couple hours passed in heavy silence. As light faded, I remembered the cellar. Paige froze when I mentioned it. "He never let me down there," she said quietly. "He used to tell me it wasn't safe." I pulled open the cellar door. Cold air spilled up. Steep, narrow stairs descended into darkness. The smell wet fur and rotting thickened halfway down. The cellar floor was packed dirt. My flashlight found a wooden work table covered in shallow cuts. Iron hooks dangled empty above it, swaying gently. On shelves along the far wall sat more jars with yellowish liquid. Things floating inside I couldn't identify. Above me, footsteps crossed the floor. "Paige." I called, no answer. My heart climbed into my throat. I rushed up the stairs. The door swung shut in my face. The latch clicked home. I slammed my palm against wood. "Paige, open the door." Her muffled voice came through. "Dylan, there's someone outside." "What do you mean?" "He's standing in the trees. He's watching me." Behind me, something shifted. I turned, flashlight beam wobbling across dirt. A shape uncurled from behind burlap sacks. Thin limbs too long for any animal. One arm stretched out, elbow bending wrong with a little pop. I backed into the stairs as it raised its head. My light caught smooth skin pulled tight over skull. No eyes, no mouth. Just blank pale flesh. It began crawling toward me, dragging itself inch by inch. Each movement made a soft sucking sound. I threw myself against the door. Wood splintered. I hit it again and again. On the third slam, it flew open and I stumbled into the kitchen. Paige stood by the table, staring past me, eyes huge. "Where is he?" He walked back into the trees. I grabbed her wrist and dragged her across the porch. We didn't stop until we were in my truck, gravel spitting behind the tires. Through the windshield. I saw a shape slip between the trees, tall, thin, moving in ways I couldn't process. We didn't speak until we hit pavement. Story 7, at 32. I planned a week-long solo camping trip in the most remote stretch of Blue Valley Range I could reach. I'd been camping for years, but never gone completely off-grid. The feeling nagged at me like proving I could handle absolute solitude would change something fundamental inside me. I spent a month planning. Every evening I studied topographic maps, searching for places with no maintained trails. I ordered a new tent, extra batteries, restocked my first aid kit, and packed a hand crank radio as a last resort. I even packed 3 different knives, which felt both dramatic and exactly right. My brother Matt was skeptical. "You're asking to star in your own missing person documentary," he said. I laughed it off, though part of me wondered if he had a point. The trailhead on Eastwick Trace was just a gravel scrape on the road shoulder, no sign, no marker, just an opening in the trees that looked like an abandoned deer track. The first day was everything I'd hoped for. 12 miles of complete silence. I passed crumbling chimneys, rusted fence posts, tangles of vine erasing the path. Late afternoon, I found perfect flat ground on a ridge overlooking a hollow with a narrow stream. That night, the quiet was different from anything I'd experienced. No distant cars, no planes, no voices, just occasional branches clicking somewhere I couldn't see. In my tent, I rested my hand on my belt knife. Just habit. The second morning, I found the mound. Following a gully after lunch, I discovered fresh-looking dirt turned up in an uneven heap, too wide and shallow for any animal burrow I knew. A crawling unease settled in my neck, but I told myself it was imagination. That evening, I stayed up late feeding the fire, watching the clearing's edges. When I finally crawled into the tent, my eyes burned from staring at flames too long. Sometime after midnight, I heard my name. A voice, low and close, spoke it clearly. Not a shout, not a question, just spoken, steady, like whoever it was knew exactly where I lay. My throat closed up. My ears rang. The voice didn't come again. At dawn, I found no footprints, no broken branches, nothing out of place. But the third night, something was behind the boulder. I made the fire larger than before, dragging every dry branch I could find until flames threw light halfway up the boulders. I settled against one, thinking if I stayed awake, I'd feel in control. I must have dozed off. When I woke to fading embers, I heard breathing behind the boulders, slow, steady, deliberate. Like whoever it was didn't care if I heard, as long as I didn't turn around. My hands trembled so badly I almost dropped the flashlight. I sat paralyzed, staring at the fire's last glow. The breathing never changed, never sped up, never slowed down, just stayed exactly the same until grey light filtered through trees. When it finally stopped, I broke camp in minutes. About a mile from the trailhead, I stopped so fast my boot slipped. In the middle of the trail was a single boot print, bigger than mine by at least 2 sizes, pressed deep into soft earth. No other prints led to it. None led away. I didn't take a picture. I started running. At my car, I locked the doors before setting down my pack. My hands shook so badly I dropped the keys twice. That was the last time I ever camped alone. Story 8. I spent that summer working for a small conservation outfit in the southern Blue Ridge. Most days involved sweating through my shirt while cataloging moss species. The group was small, just 6 of us, hauling gear and updating old, Surveys in places so remote you wondered why they appeared on maps at all. The Monday they assigned me, track 14, my supervisor Helena handed me the file. Good luck, this one's a black hole. Half the papers were illegible copies. The last field report was from 1978, typed by someone named Brooks, just a list of trees. And native plants with one line tacked on the end. Old dwelling remains. Advise caution. The road out there was the worst I'd ever driven. Gravel thinned to rutted clay with weeds taller than my bumper. 2 hours to get past the last mailbox. Eventually, the road just quit. I pulled over where it dissolved into grass and broken branches. 8 feet up, a sycamore trunk was a warped board with a burnt in. 14. My only confirmation I was in the right place, within 20 steps. The road disappeared completely. The first hour was steady climbing. I stopped to scribble notes, patches, mushroom clusters, a tiny frog that nearly jumped into my boot. My GPS kept flashing in and out. Then I noticed a break in the undergrowth, a dip in the slope, stone foundation tucked into a hollow. It looked so out of place I thought I was imagining it. The foundation held secrets, stacked stones half collapsed, rusted stove with bent pipe, moss growing thick inside. I brushed leaves aside with my boot, uncovering glass shards, a crushed spoon, a faded lunchbox with cartoon animals. Inside, a scrap of blue cloth and bright marbles, red-yellow, blue swirls that looked almost fresh. That's when my neck prickled. Something heavy shifted in the trees. A slow, deliberate weight transfer, too quiet for a bear. I stood and turned in a circle. Nothing, just trunks and shadows. Then a second sound, higher up a branch, cracking, a soft thud. I called out casually, but my voice came out too high. No answer. I took steps uphill toward a pale tulip poplar. Behind it, a clear bootprint pressed into leaves. The heel dug in, like whoever left it pushed off in a hurry. I needed to leave. Now, turning back down slope, everything felt wrong. Trees tighter together, shadows thicker. My GPS screen was dark. About halfway to the fence line, I heard the voice, "Come back," quiet but clear. A cracked whisper through old radio static. I froze. Then again, closer, "Come back." The third time, something inside me quit pretending. I bolted through rhododendron, not caring about direction. My pack slammed into my back with every step. Branches caught my shirt, scraped my arms. When I finally stumbled to a halt, shaking so badly I had to grab a tree, I was lost. I forced myself to focus. Downhill leads to the road, eventually. After what felt like an hour, I saw a pale strip of light ahead. I broke into a run, convinced it would vanish if I didn't reach it fast enough. I burst out of the trees and nearly fell. My truck sat exactly where I'd left it. I forced myself to look back. At first, nothing. Then something stepped into the open tool, dressed in an old canvas coat with dark stains down the front. I couldn't see a face. It raised one arm slowly and pointed back into the woods. I climbed into the truck with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The key slipped out twice before catching. When the engine turned over, I backed up so fast the tires sprayed gravel. I turned in the GPS and my notes without saying a word. I never set foot in track 14 again. These stories prove some places in the Appalachian. Wilderness should stay unexplored. Some doors shouldn't be opened. Some paths shouldn't be followed. And some voices calling your name in the dark should never, ever be answered. If this story moved you, Hit subscribe with notifications on, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from?